Well, hi, welcome back. So this is going to be the second video that I am working on. This one is more economics, which is not very fun. Economics are not fun at all. They're not fun to talk about. I don't really like doing economic stuff, but we're going to do this one. Like I said, the articles, apparently people don't read articles. They will pay attention when it's presented in audiovisual format, but not actually read. So we're going to read this article. How about that? So this one, Yahoo financed, money-wise. Think you are middle class in America. Pew research shows there's a roughly 49% chance you're actually not. All right. So here we go. Here's the article. So before I actually get into this article, though, I kind of want to play a little bit of this video. And I tried listening to it. And there's something about this that I want to talk about. They don't talk about this when they bring up 401ks quite a lot. And I find it fascinating how much the person who talks about 401ks in this just doesn't want to talk about things, doesn't want to bring up a lot that has to do with why people struggle with them. It says people, well, you'll find out. You'll find out. Hold on. You'll find out. So here we go.
Yahoo Finance Marist poll. Banked households in America are not enthusiastic about the money they have saved. Only 10% say that they are completely satisfied with their savings. One of the key accounts Americans use to save for retirement is a 401k, and we want to discuss how to become more satisfied with your savings. Joining me now in studio, we've got back live in living colors, Cedric Nash, Oakland Consulting Group CEO and founder of the Black Wealth Summit. Cedric, great to have you back here.
Thank you, Brad. Happy to be here.
So let's discuss this. How can you take advantage of your 401k?
Somebody who's undoubtedly got a lot of money is going to tell a bunch of working class people why and how they should put money aside in 401k, especially if you have student loan debt.
401k. A lot of people have probably been checking their 401ks over the past several weeks with some of the market volatility.
It's interesting.
That's very funny, the market volatility. You know, a lot of people have lost a lot of money in that. Their ability to retire just...
401k is an incredible tool for planning for retirement. However, unfortunately, people are not contributing enough.
It's actually not a very good tool for retirement. What was better was back when we had the pension plans. What the 401k does, though, is it takes your ability to retire outside of the company you work for, back when there was a lot more employee to employer viability is not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? Loyalty. There was a lot more of that. And the onus to ensure that the employee had the money set aside to retire was more of a cooperative effort, rather than playing like a high stakes game of gambling and putting your money that's taken out of your paycheck into some kind of stock of a company and hope that it doesn't tank and hope that the stock market does well. And it's basically gambling, playing blackjack with your ability to retire, which is what the 401k model did. The person who introduced the 401k model did not intend for 401ks to replace pension plans and SSA retirement, but more as an added benefit or like a fringe benefit that employers could offer to employees to ensure that their retirement had more of a safety net on it. However, this was so beneficial to the companies basically threw away pension plans. There's almost no companies today that offer pension plans. My grandparents' era, like pretty much the last era where pension plans were extremely common. Now they're extremely rare. So no, 401ks are terrible. And even the guy who came up with them was like, what they've done with 401ks is not what he wanted to have happen. It's just another way for your employer to screw you and for them to profit off of it. That's really what it is. That's said from the man who invented the 401k.
And it's one of those things that people constantly put on the back burner. I mean, according to studies, about 41% of people eligible.
And see, he's not even going to go into why they put it on the back burner. I think a lot of people are very, very aware of why 401ks are important, and that the moment they start working and making money, that they need to start a 401k. But he's not bringing up why they don't. It's not so much being put on a back burner. For me, for example, my own personal story. I know it's anecdotal, but I know this is a lot of people's story. Upon employment, I knew that starting a 401k was important, but at the time I was making maybe 75 cents over what the federal minimum wage was. And with rent, utilities, food, pretty much basic needs, there was no way that I had any money left over to be able to put aside for 401k. And that was when I was living in an income-based apartment, very high crime, not a great place to live at all. It took me quite some time before I started making enough money to still live paycheck to paycheck, but still have enough money to be able to put aside into a 401k. But we're not going to talk about that. And it doesn't even bring up like emergency medical plans. Like I know a woman who has survived cancer, has nerve damage, radial median ulnar from fingertip to elbow in both of her arms, has had to have some kind of cyst removed out of her neck that was causing nerve impingement. And after all that, including the death of her son, she has had to declare bankruptcy 3 times and still owes medical bills, particularly from the cancer treatment. And so her 401k is gone. She's in her 50s right now. She will probably never be able to retire. And she was putting into her 401k since she first started working as early as 20 years old. And she's now in her 50s, and she doesn't have a 401k anymore and has had to declare bankruptcy multiple times, not because of being irresponsible with money. You know, she never lived like a high life. She's been driving the same car for many, many, many years, trying to keep it alive. Lucky enough to have a sibling who works on cars, so she's been able to have her car worked on for free. She's had some men take care of her in this whole sort of traditional man kind of chivalry type thing. live very meagerly in a small apartment and never live beyond her means. But these medical expenses, they come along, they hit you, they're a lot of money, and you can't pay it off. It starts to mess with your ability to do things. And yeah, so she has a 401k that she's been putting money into ever since she was 20 years old, now is in her 50s, is gone, and has declared bankruptcy at least 3 or 4 times.
To participate in 401ks are participating in them. And a lot of times they keep deferring it. So, I think that people need to take more advantage of it. One of the things they need to do, especially when they're first coming out of college, getting their first job, is
And see how detached that is to first coming out of college and getting your first job. A lot of people who are graduating from college know this. When you first graduate from college and get your first job, sadly, there's a lot out there where you'll be lucky if you make over minimum wage, or at least the state's minimum wage. There are instances where you could get a degree as a computer tech and end up making $9 an hour just making house calls to work on people's computers. You can get a CNA, CMA, LPN type license, and the best way to make money doing that is what is it called? Where you call agencies and see if they have any clients. What is that called? Name of what that's called isn't coming to me. But you could be sent within like a pretty decent mile radius to basically you'll be at calls to like different long-term care facilities, or different like house care organizations will say, oh, we had a CNA, CMA, LPN or something like that call in, so we need somebody to fill that position. I mean, it could be the next town over. And those kind of job centers, I think is what they're called, is the best way to make money doing that. Because if you go and you just work at a long-term care facility or one of these organizations that does send out house nurses to take care of like elderly people or people with health conditions, you're looking at minimum wage to $9 an hour. Yep. With a degree. And a lot of people experience that. And especially today when you're looking at rent rates, like for a studio that could be anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500 a month. You're making $8 an hour. Then you got to get groceries. And you got to pay your electric bill. You got to pay the water and trash bill. And then this guy is saying, oh, just put some money into your 401k. So detached to me.
To immediately maximize their contribution.
And maximize their contribution. Yeah. It's like he wants people to go bankrupt.
One thing that most people older said that if they start all over again, they would do, especially if the company is contributing a match.
People who are older, like people in my grandparents' age bracket, they grew up in a time of American prosperity, like through the 1950s. So that was much easier for them to do. It was very, very easy to have an annual income of $20,000 a year, have 2-3 cars, and live in a nice house. That is not the case anymore. It's not. You can't even do that on $55,000 a year.
You're leaving money on.
So I'm done with this guy. We're moving on to the article. That guy is irritating to me. It just seems so detached from reality. I bet you he makes good money, and to him, it's probably like, I don't understand why these people don't do it. Well, most people don't make, 6 figures a year. That's why. The term middle class is often discussed, but rarely defined. It's a term the majority of Americans would use to define themselves, yet most people don't know whether their household truly fits into that category. Based on the Pew Research Center's analysis of government data, roughly 49% of Americans don't actually fall into the middle class income category. And actually, I've done a video on this before, and I still have the data from it on my phone. I'm going to read it to you. 49% is actually not a very accurate statistic. It's actually much higher than that of people who do not fall into what we call the middle class, unless they've changed the parameters, what we consider middle class, which means that the sort of comfort or quality of life expectancy in America is going down. Yeah. So thanks, Jeff Bezos. You can now become a landlord as little as $100, and no, you don't have to deal with tenants or fixed freezers. And here's how that's a scam. There's no way. The real middle class. Pew Research Center defines the middle class as a household with income that is at least 2/3 of the U.S. median income to double the median income based on government data for 2022. This would imply a range of incomes from $56,000 to $169,800. Actually, I'm running with the same stats as this from the Pew Research Center and a few other government agencies as well. It's actually worse than this. The reason why they're coming up with the 2/3, and I'm assuming why they're coming up with this 49%, is because they're putting it all the way up to $169,800 annual income. As of 2023, 51% of American households fit into this category. Yeah, I'm sure when you put it up to $169,800 a year, but this is not normal. That's not within the range of the average income. Another study from Gallup, I use Gallup too, found that 54% of Americans, and this number is closer but not quite, of Americans would describe themselves as middle class. So it seems most people are pretty self-aware where they fall on the income spectrum, but most Americans might not be aware that this cohort of middle income earners is getting squeezed. And I think that's where it is basically the luxury, the expectancy of middle class is going down. So basically what we used to look at as upper lower class is now being considered somewhat middle class. Read more from, no, I don't want to read more from BlackRock CEO. I don't. The guy's rich and seems to be pretty out of touch. The share of the American population that fits into the middle class category has been shrinking for the past 5 decades, according to the Pew Research, which is what I found. Roughly 61% of households across the country were part of this cohort in 1971, a full 10 percentage points higher than the recent 51% rate we are at today. This is actually about the percentage of how many Americans live in sort of a lower income tier bracket. Average to lower. It's about 61% of Americans pretty much struggling today. American families are being increasingly pushed to opposite ends of the income spectrum. From 1971 to 2023, the share of U.S. households in the lower income bracket grew from 27% to 30%, while those in upper income households increased from 11% to 19%. This trend may be a reflection of growing income inequality, which is something us on the left have been talking about for a very long time, and we've been wanting our political advocates to speak on this matter and address it across the country. And many families feel like they are on the brink of falling into a lower category. And I think if we continue on the trend that we are with the current administration regime, I think homelessness is going to become more and more significant. It has been growing significantly. Last I checked it, homelessness rates, it was 20%. I'd be willing to bet it's even higher now. A recent national survey by the National Foundation of Credit Counseling, NCFF, found that 53% of U.S. adults feel like they can't make financial progress, and 48% say they are constantly treading water financially. Probably more than these two numbers, but I believe it. I'm not shocked. So, a long time ago, I was interested in this, and this is what I found. The Census Bureau and Statista household income percentages. And this comes from Statista.com, statistics, distribution, household income, U.S. According to these numbers, 62.4% of Americans live off of $99,999 all the way down to zero. So between income brackets of $0 a year to $99,999 a year, that makes up that which is a huge income bracket, just short of $100,000 a year. That makes up the vast majority of the American population at 62.44%. And only 37.5% of Americans live off of $100,000 a year or more. According to the U.S. Census Bureau of 2022, the average median wage is $37,585. Now think about what that means when the average median wage is $37,585 and your rent rates have gone up by a factor of about, depending on the area, some areas they've gone up like 56%. Overall, across the board, they have gone up about 46%. Rent rates, the rent rates. So if you were paying for a 1-bedroom apartment, let's say back in, it could have been 2017, 2016, and that was $600. I'm referring to something very specifically, actually. An apartment company, a real estate company that owns rental properties, that owns an apartment complex. It's a very specific apartment complex. The 1-bedrooms that they were running were $600 a month for a very, very long time. And actually, just a couple of years ago, when Biden and Kamala Harris had something called the Renters' Rights Bill on the House floor, the Republicans killed the bill. They killed the bill called the Renters' Rights Act, stating that it was price control, that it was antithetical to the free market capitalist system, blah, 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 blah. That's socialist. So the Republican representatives, they killed the Renters' Rights Act on the House floor, presented by Biden and Kamala. It was back in October, and a few days later, within the same week, rent rates across the entire United States went up by 41% after that bill was destroyed by the Republicans. And had that bill gone in place, they wouldn't have been able to do that. Your rent rates would have only increased as usual, which typically was only about $20 every time you re-sign your lease. So right now, they went from making, maybe, I'm not sure on the exact statistics, okay? I am guessing. I want to make that very, very clear. I am guessing that they went from about 20% profit rates almost up to about 120% profit rates. I would have to check that. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I am just guessing. But they are making higher profit rates now for these rental properties than they were in the past. And that is a fact. So that $600 one bedroom unit is now going for $1,300. That's more than double. That's more than a 50% increase. More than a 50% increase. They're the property hasn't changed. In fact, they're taking away amenities. They've done some what they remodeling, and what they're calling remodeling isn't remodeling. It's just basic upkeep. They're replacing, some broken cabinets and some really shitty, trashy countertops, and taking the shower doors out of the bathtubs and replacing them with shower curtains, so you can have a shower rod, and so you can have a shower curtain instead of shower doors. And they're calling that remodeling. You're still going to have the same, kitchen sinks, appliances, thermostat, mix-it knobs, and I hate fucking mix-it knobs. These are all from the 80s or the 70s, and they suck. And that's what they're calling remodeling. So, and they're taking out the ice makers. They're taking out little sprayers in the kitchen sinks. And some of them, I think they're even removing dishwashers and garbage disposals. So they're downgrading the apartments. They're making them look nice with a little bit nicer with some cheap shit that they can get at Home Depot. And the staff has not increased. They've actually shrunk maintenance staff, and they've been doing less at getting things done. And they're charging more than 50% more in rent rates. And every company that owns rental property in the city in the entire metropolitan city that I live in, have all done this. So there's no escape from it. You can't go to a different company and have competition. It doesn't exist. They're all charging the same amount. And there's like a place, I think it's in Montana. There's a city in Montana. The rent rates have gone up like really high because a bunch of really rich people have been building really, really expensive mansions, and where they have rent rates like this town is nothing but service workers for these rich people that own vacation homes in this area, and the rent rates there are like $2,600 some odd dollars, all the way up to like $3,000 for like a studio apartment, like a really shitty studio apartment. And these people are making like $8 to $10 an hour. So literally, like, everyone who services that area, that does the customer service for all the rich people that have their little summer home or little vacation homes up there, not a single person who actually runs the service industry, the restaurants, the coffee houses, and the retail stores down there actually can even afford to live there. A lot of them are living in their vehicles because the rates of being able to buy a home or rent a home or duplex or an apartment are so high, literally nobody can afford them. Even though everybody's working, nobody can afford them. That's a real story. So I'll leave the link to this article in the description. I don't know if I'll be able to get you the links that I have here on the phone, because in this little document I have, because I'm not sure how to transfer it from here to here, but yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, tell me how you feel. Ignore the right-wing trolls, yada yada yada. And with that, I'm just gonna say I'm out. Out.